The voice that shattered the tranquility of her afternoon was not just loud, it was a seismic roar from the very bones of the house. "Chloe, get down here, now!" Chloe Mitchell jolted, sloshing lukewarm coffee under the sleeve of her cashmere sweater. She furrowed her brow, setting the ceramic mug, a world's best mom relic from a simpler time, into the farmhouse sink with a sharp clank. Her husband, Mark, wasn't a yeller. He was a steady, stoic man, a former college linebacker whose physical presence had always been a source of comfort, not fear. 1,000 domestic catastrophes flashed through her mind: a burst pipe flooding his prized home gym, a shelf of their expensive wine collection collapsing, a raccoon family staging a hostile takeover. "Coming," she called back, her voice deliberately light, a practice calm she used to soothe their now-grown children. As she descended the creaking wooden steps into the basement's cool, damp air, the single, bare bulb cast long, distorted shadows. It felt like walking into a different era, a tomb of their shared history. Mark stood in the far corner, a mountain of a man silhouetted against the concrete wall. He was surrounded by a fortress of half-open cardboard boxes, their contents, old tax returns, childhood art projects, faded photographs spilled across the floor like entrails. In his hand, he clutched a small fabric-bound book with a cover the color of faded Pepto-Bismol. A cold trickle of unease, faint but persistent, dripped down Chloe's spine. "That better not be my old diary," she said, forcing a chuckle that sounded brittle even to her own ears. She wasn't concerned. Not really. Those diaries were ancient history, chronicles of a girl she barely remembered, a girl filled with teenage angst and collegiate melodrama. She'd packed them away during their move to this very house 25 years ago and had genuinely forgotten their existence. Yet something in Mark's posture made the fine hairs on her forearms erect. It was the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his head was bowed not in reading, but in devastation. He turned slowly to face her. The light caught his expression and Chloe's breath hitched. It wasn't just anger. It was a profound, soul-deep disbelief, etched into the lines around his eyes and twisted with a raw, unfiltered disgust. "Yeah, Chloe," he said, his voice a low, gravelly tremor that made her blood run cold. "Your diary. The same one you used to keep some pretty elaborate records." She swallowed, the sound loud in the tense silence. "Mark, come on. You know I used to write all sorts of silly, dramatic nonsense when I was young. It's probably nothing but cringe-worthy poetry and complaints about my roommates." She reached out her hand, a placating gesture, hoping he'd just sigh and drop the book into her palm. Instead, his knuckles whitened as he gripped it tighter, the fragile cover buckling under the pressure. "I'm not sure it's nothing, Chloe, because what I just read," his nostrils flared. "My God, you've destroyed me." Her heartbeat, a steady drum a moment before, now quickened into a frantic, pounding rhythm in her ears. "What are you talking about?" He opened the diary, flipping to a page that had been dog-eared with a violent purpose. His hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. In a voice trembling with a rage she had never heard from him, he read aloud. "I wish Mark would just propose already. I'm so tired of waiting for him to get his life together. Being with Kyle is so much more freeing. And, oh, that thing Kyle did with his—" Mark stopped. He exhaled sharply, a sound like a tire blowout. He turned the page, his eyes scanning the text with manic intensity. "Wait, there's more here, and it's not just Kyle." Chloe's stomach plummeted, a free fall into a chasm she hadn't known existed. Oh no, this was far worse than the old singular transgression she had mentally buried and rationalized away over the decades. I remembered now, vaguely, scribbling out my fantasies and exploits in that diary. Some were real, fumbling experiences from her early 20s. Others were wild exaggerations born of insecurity and a desperate desire to feel exciting. At the time, writing it all down was a bizarre, secret thrill, a way to feel alive. "Mark," I began, forcing a lightness into her voice that she was miles from feeling. "This happened a lifetime ago. Why does it even matter now? We were kids." "Stop talking!" he shouted, the veins in his neck bulging like ropes. The sound echoed off the concrete walls. "I'm not finished."
With shaking hands, he rifled through the pages, his eyes darting over the cramped script. He began reading random paragraphs in a voice barely controlled, each one a fresh bullet aimed at the heart of their marriage. Mark is away on another internship. God, it's so boring here. But Greg came over last night. I can't stop thinking about the way he pinned me against the wall, how his fingers felt on my skin. Maybe I'll let him come over again this weekend. He flipped another page, his face a mask of revulsion. Wow! I never thought I'd be the type to be with more than one guy in a single day. But here I am. First with Eddie in the morning after my shift at the diner, and then meeting up with Matt in the evening. The rush is undescribable. I sometimes wonder if I'm doing the right thing, but I'm not hurting anyone, right? Mark doesn't need to know. I'm sure once we're married, I'll settle down.
Each new excerpt was a dagger, twisting deeper. Chloe pressed a trembling hand to her mouth as if she could physically hold back the truth. She had completely forgotten that these diaries contained far more than just a fling with Kyle. She had chronicled a whole series of indiscretions, drunken kisses at frat parties, sordid backseat encounters, full-blown affairs with multiple men, all while wearing the promise ring Mark had given her. And woven throughout were the explicit, detailed fantasies laid bare in her own youthful handwriting. "Mark," she whispered, tears finally welling in her eyes. "That was 30 years ago. None of it matters anymore. Look at the life we built." He glared at her, a look so full of venom it felt physical, and then slammed the diary shut with a finality that made her jump. "Matters? You think reading this?" He brandished the book at her, his whole arm shaking. "Where my own wife, the woman I've vowed my life to, brags about hooking up with one guy after another like she's collecting trophies? Doesn't matter?" She took a step back, the initial fear morphing into a defensive cold arrogance. She would not let him see her grovel. She would not be that vulnerable girl again. "I'm not that person anymore. I was young and dumb and insecure." "Were you?" he snapped, his voice cracking. "Because you wrote in here about things you did while we were already engaged. While I was working 2 jobs to save for a ring you said you loved. While I was planning our future." "Oh, for God's sake, Mark, stop acting like this is some fresh betrayal," she scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest, a shield against his pain. "It's older than our entire marriage. I haven't seen or spoken to those men in decades." "I had the right to know what I was marrying," he roared, his voice echoing off the low basement ceiling, a primal sound of a betrayed man. "Instead, I was duped. I thought you were just anxious, lonely when I was away. I felt guilty for leaving you. Meanwhile, you were... He couldn't even finish the sentence, gesturing wildly at the diary. "It was only a few times," she hissed, the lie coming automatically, a reflex born of self-preservation. But as the words left her lips, the dam of repressed memory broke. It wasn't a few times, it was a pattern, a hedonistic, self-destructive spree during their 2-year engagement, a period she had neatly folded away and labeled youthful indiscretion. Mark fixed her with a stare that froze her on the spot. "You said a few times, Chloe? Try reading your own words. There are pages about you meeting guy after guy. It reads like the diary of some out-of-controlled self-destructive spree. And the details. I feel like I don't even know you. I feel like I've been sharing a bed with a stranger." Her face hardened. "Look, it's done. You can't change the past." His laugh was hollow, devoid of any warmth. "Oh, that's your defense? That it doesn't count because it was a long time ago? That's pathetic." She shrugged, mustering a dismissive attitude she was far from feeling. Deep down, panic was roiling in her gut, a nauseating whirlpool. Instead, Jerry turned and violently ripped open another, older box, sending a cloud of dust into the air. He rummaged through it, his movements frantic. "And you kept these, too. I'm starting to wonder if you enjoyed remembering every filthy detail." Chloe's blood ran cold. She recognized that box. It held old Polaroids, concert ticket stubs, and other mementos from a life she should have incinerated years ago. He pulled out a square, faded photograph. Chloe's heart nearly stopped. She knew that picture. "Who," he said slowly, his voice dangerously quiet, "who are these men?"
His eyes flicked between the picture and his wife, demanding an answer. The photo showed a much younger Chloe, her hair big and permed, sitting on a shabby plaid couch. She was wearing a tight-ripped Def Leppard t-shirt and a miniskirt, leaning into a group of 5 shirtless, grinning men. They were all muscle and bravado, each with an arm slung around her in a possessive and familiar way. One was flexing a bicep near her face. Another, in the back, was making a crude gesture behind her head. But the worst part was Chloe's own expression. She wasn't embarrassed or coerced. She looked thrilled, ecstatic, her head thrown back in laughter, a beer bottle held aloft. And scrawled across the bottom in black marker, in her own unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "The best night ever. Spring break 91. Mark's eyes glistened with tears he refused to shed. "Why?" he said, hushed, teetering on the precipice of utter heartbreak and homicidal fury. "Why would you save this? Why would you hold on to a memory of this violation of everything we were supposed to be?" She shrugged again, a weak, twitchy gesture. "I forgot I even had it. It was just in a box." He let the photo fall from his hand as if it were coated in acid. It fluttered to the concrete floor, landing face up, the frozen image of her past debauchery mocking their present devastation.
"Get out," he said, not looking at her. "Mark." He stared her down, his eyes now completely flat, dead. "I said, get out." Chloe stormed up the stairs, hot, angry tears in her eyes, but her face was twisted into a rebellious scowl. "This is insane," she muttered to herself, stomping into the pristine, sunlit kitchen. "He's throwing away 30 years of a good marriage, a family, a life, because of some ancient history I can barely remember? Why did he have to go snooping like some pathetic detective?" Mark emerged from the basement moments later, carrying the open diary and a handful of the incriminating photographs. His calmness was more terrifying than his rage had been. "You're going to your sister's," he said flatly. "You can't just banish me. This is my house, too." "Not anymore," he replied, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Not until I figure out what to do with all of this." He gestured to the diary as if it were a live snake. "Do you have any idea, Chloe, any idea at all, how humiliating this is? For 30 years, I've believed in a marriage, in a wife that might have been a lie from the very first day." She rolled her eyes, a gesture of pure contempt. "My God, Mark, if it was such a lie, then why did we have such a good life? Why did we have 2 beautiful children? Why did we build all of this?" She swept her arm around the beautiful home they had painstakingly restored together. He took a ragged breath. "Was it a good life, Chloe? Or did you just get bored with your wild streak and decide I was the safe stable bet, the guy who would never suspect a thing?" "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she snapped. "You're blowing everything out of proportion. So I had a wild phase when I was younger. Big deal. People change." Mark's lips thinned into a bloodless line. "Pack a bag, or I'll pack it for you." Chloe wanted to keep arguing, to wear him down with her logic and her dismissals, but one look into his eyes that once gazed at her with so much love, told her he was dead serious. The man she knew was gone, replaced by this cold, implacable stranger. Reluctantly, she turned and headed to their master bedroom. As she shoved armfuls of clothes into a large suitcase, you could hear him pacing outside the door, a caged animal. Just before she zipped the bag shut, her eyes fell on a silver-framed family photo on her nightstand. It was from their 25th anniversary trip to Hawaii. Mark, their daughter Hannah, their son Ben, and her. They were all tanned and laughing, squeezed together on a catamaran, the Pacific Ocean sparkling behind them. They looked like the perfect American family. She picked up the photo, her fingers tracing the glass over their smiling faces. She closed her eyes and whispered, "He'll calm down. He has to. This is just a shock. He'll get over it." Out in the driveway, Mark was standing at the front door, his expression like granite. She hauled her suitcase to her Lexus, her head held high in a facade of wounded pride. Before she got in, she turned and glared at him. "This is ridiculous, and you will regret it." He swallowed hard but didn't respond, didn't even blink. As she reversed out of the driveway, she looked in the rearview mirror. He was still standing there, a solitary, heartbreaking figure, the little pink diary clutched in his hand like a verdict. In that moment, she hated him. She hated him for his righteousness, for his pain, for shattering the beautiful illusion of their life. And buried so deep she would never admit it, she hated herself. The gossip mill on their small Pennsylvania town, Brookhaven, was ruthlessly efficient. By the time Chloe reached her sister's Melissa's house on the other side of town, her phone was already blowing up with notifications. The first text from her best friend, Carol. "Chloe, are you okay? Mark is at O'Malley's telling people he found some old diaries of yours. He's really upset." Another from a woman in her book club. "Heard there's trouble in paradise." "Everything all right?"
Chloe cursed under her breath, slamming her car door. So he wasn't just wounded, he was airing our dirty laundry in public. He's humiliating me, she thought, shoving her phone into her purse. She'd deal with that later. Her sister Melissa, ever the pragmatist, was less than sympathetic. Diaries, she said, her arms crossed as Chloe dragged her suitcase inside. What kind of diaries, Chloe? What did you write? It's nothing, Mel, just some stupid stuff before we were married. Mark is having a midlife crisis and blowing out out of proportion. Her eyes narrowed. He looked pretty proportional when he stopped by here an hour ago looking for you. He said he found evidence of a double life. What does that mean? It means he's being dramatic, Chloe shot back, the defensiveness rising in her like a tide. Meanwhile, Mark was not idle. He was on a video call with Hannah, who lived in Chicago, and Ben, who was at college in Boston. He didn't shout, he didn't cry. He just laid out the facts with a chilling, methodical calm. He held up the diary, he read select, damning passages, he showed the Polaroid. Within an hour, Chloe's phone rang. It was Hannah. Mom, her daughter's voice was shaking, a mixture of anger and confusion. What is Dad talking about? He says you cheated on him with a bunch of different men? I bristled, an indignant flush rising to her cheeks. Hannah, watch your tone with me. This is between your father and me. Oh, so now you're going to pull the I'm your mother card? You can't hide behind that anymore. Dad showed us scans of the pages you wrote about hooking up with 5 men in the same week while you were engaged to him. It wasn't like that, Chloe insisted, her mind racing. It was out of context, and it was decades ago, for heaven's sake. I was a different person. You lied to him. You lied to us. God, Mom, I was looked up to you. I can't believe I'm saying this, but right now, I'm disgusted. The line went dead. Chloe stood frozen in Melissa's guest room, the silence ringing in her ears. The first true fissure had appeared in the bedrock of her life, and it was spreading fast. Days turned into a tense, silent standoff. Chloe tried to salvage the relationship with her children, that Hannah was icy, and Ben, her gentle son, was simply absent, refusing to take her calls. Then the final bombshell dropped. It came on a Tuesday afternoon. Hannah called, her voice eerily, unnervingly calm. Mom, she said without preamble, I sent off for a DNA test. Chloe's world stopped. The memory of those chaotic months around her engagement flashed before her eyes, a dizzying carousel of faces. Mark, Kyle, Greg, Eddie, Matt. She remembered the timeline of Hannah's conception, how she had been secretly terrified, how she had counted the days and clung to the hope that it had to be Mark's. She had buried that fear so deep, had told herself the story so many times that she had almost come to believe it. What are you talking about? Chloe asked, her throat as dry as dust. A simple DNA test, she repeated. I've been wanting to do one for a while for genealogical reasons, but you know what else it shows, right? Chloe bit her lip. Honey, you're being irrational. Those at-home tests aren't even that accurate. Her daughter's voice hardened. They're accurate enough. Besides, Dad agreed to do one too. We'll see if we match. Chloe closed her eyes, a wave of vertigo washing over her. This was it, the point of no return. All right, she said, barely above a whisper. You go ahead and do that. The 2-week wait for the results was a special kind of torture. Each day was an eternity of gnawing anxiety. She prayed, she bargained, she Googled frantically about the fallibility of DNA tests. She clung to the hope that Mark was the father because if he wasn't, the life she knew was not just cracked, it was pulverized. The results came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Chloe was pacing in Melissa's backyard when her phone vibrated. Hannah's name flashed on the screen. She answered, her hand trembling. Mom, Hannah's voice was thin, reedy, on the verge of hysteria. The results, it says, I'm not Dad's daughter. The words were a physical blow. Chloe's knees buckled and she sank onto the damp grass. Oh my God, she choked out. It's true. How could you, Mom? How could you? Hannah was sobbing now, her breath coming in ragged gasps. My entire life is a lie. Dad is not my dad. All this time, did you know? Chloe let out a choked cry. I suspected, but I wasn't sure. I thought I might be just overthinking it. Honey, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
She could hear her daughter's world collapsing through the phone. Dad's packing up his things. He's moving. He told me he can't stay in this house, in this town anymore. He's talking about relocating to Arizona near his brother. You have to fix this. How am I supposed to fix something like this? Chloe cried, the rain mingling with the tears on her face. Your father, Hannah spat the word, everything I know about myself is a lie. He loves me, but he's not my biological father. This changes everything. The line went dead. Chloe sat in the cold rain, utterly broken. The carefully constructed fortress of her life was now nothing but rubble. She drove back to the house she had shared with Mark, a maelstrom of defiance, humiliation, and raw terror swirling inside her.
She found him in the living room, which was already half packed into cardboard boxes. His eyes were red-rimmed, but his gaze was steady and cold. "You have nerve showing up here," he said quietly. "I need the rest of my things." "Yeah, well, you might want to take all of them. I'm moving, officially." She froze. "What about us?" "There is no us, Chloe. You lied. You cheated. You carried on like... I don't even have the words. And now we learn that Hannah..." He trailed off, the pain too acute to voice. "Our daughter isn't even biologically mine." A storm of conflicting emotions twisted in Chloe's gut. She wanted to fight, to deny, to minimize. But the DNA test was a truth that could not be argued with. "Mark," she managed, swallowing hard. "I was young. I was stupid. I didn't know who the father was, but I loved you. I chose you. That's why I married you instead of those other guys. And you raised her. That has to count for something." His eyes flared with a fresh, white-hot anger. "Counts for something. Jesus, Chloe, you let me believe she was mine. I read her Goodnight Moon 1,000 times. I taught her how to drive a stick shift. I walked her down the aisle at her wedding, for God's sake. And you didn't have the basic human decency to tell me there was even a chance I wasn't her father?" She took a step toward him, her arms outstretched in a plea. "I was protecting you. I was protecting her. She sees you as her dad. You are her dad." He shook his head, the bitterness dripping from each syllable. "Protecting me? That's rich. Do you realize how messed up that is, Chloe? You unilaterally decided that I shouldn't know the truth about my own life, about my own child. Congratulations, you played God. And you lost." She tried to touch his arm, but he recoiled as if from a hot brand. "Don't," he said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Don't even try. The only reason you came back here was to scrounge for pity or to salvage your reputation." His eyes flicked over her with utter contempt. "Arrogant, selfish. That's what you are." "Oh, you're arrogant. You're the one telling the whole town about this, humiliating me in front of everyone we know." "Good," he snapped, his voice rising again. "You deserve to be humiliated. You deserve for everyone to know the liar you are, for turning our life, my life, into a goddamn joke." Chloe clenched her fists. "Well, guess what, Mark? You're not exactly a saint here, airing our dirty laundry all over Brookhaven. You think you're so high and mighty?" He looked like he might explode, but then he visibly forced himself to exhale, achieving a terrifying, unnatural calm. "Leave. Now." She hesitated, her body trembling with adrenaline and rage. "Leave," he repeated, "or so help me God, I'll call the cops and have you removed for trespassing." Her mouth twitched. She knew he wasn't bluffing, though every fiber of her being wanted to stay and fight, to scream until he understood. She turned on her heel and walked out, slamming the heavy oak door behind her with a finality that echoed through the empty house. As soon as she collapsed into the driver's seat of her car, the dam broke. Sobs racked her body, great heaving cries of loss and regret. "Why are you crying?" an inner voice asked. "You did this. He's right. You did all of it." In a town of only 8,000 people, the Mitchell scandal was a 5-course meal. It was the talk of the line at the grocery store, the subject of hushed conversations at the PTA, the lead story on the local Facebook gossip page. When Chloe ventured out to get groceries for her sister, she felt the weight of 1,000 stares. Some were pitying, which was worse than the openly disapproving glares from the women at the yoga studio who had once been her friends. She overheard 2 women in the cereal aisle at Wegmans. "Did you hear about Chloe Mitchell? Turns out Hannah isn't even Mark's. I heard she had a whole other life before they were married, diaries and everything. My friend Brenda saw the photo, the one with all the men. Can you imagine?" Chloe abandoned her cart, a half-gallon of milk and a loaf of bread sitting pathetically amidst the judgment, and fled to the parking lot. Her phone buzzed. It was Melissa, frantic. "Chloe, get back here, now. Mark's on the phone. He wants to talk to you." Her heart leapt with a foolish, desperate hope. Had he calmed down? Had he realized their history was bigger than this? She rushed back to find Mark on speakerphone, the tension in the room so thick it was suffocating. "Chloe?" His voice came through, sounding exhausted, drained of all emotion. "I need a favor." A favor? Her mind raced. Was this a peace offering? "Yes, a favor. I've had enough. I'm leaving for Arizona next week. I need you to sign some papers so we can move forward with a formal separation. Her stomach twisted into a knot. A separation? Mark, don't do this! Sign them, he said, ignoring her plea, or I'll file for divorce without any negotiation, and you'll get nothing. Melissa and her husband exchanged horrified glances. Chloe pressed her palms to her temples, frustration boiling over. So that's how you're going to play it? You'll leave me with nothing after 30 years of marriage? He gave a short, harsh laugh. Actually, Chloe, you left me with nothing the moment you decided it was fine to cheat on me and lie about it for 30 years. So sign the papers, or I'll do this the hard way. She bit back a scathing retort, the tears burning at the back of her eyes. Fine, she spat. Send them over. The weeks that followed were a descent into a bitter, lonely gloom. Chloe ignored phone calls and deleted texts from nosy acquaintances. She heard, through the relentless small-town grapevine, that Mark had been seen having coffee with Sarah, the ex-wife of Kyle, the very first name mentioned in her diary. The rumor felt like a twist of the knife in an already festering wound. How dare he? He was doing exactly what I did, she thought, pacing the confines of her sister's guest room. Only he's flaunting it. He wants me to suffer. In truth, Mark had every right to see whomever he wanted, but the thought of him bonding with Sarah over the mutual betrayal caused by Chloe and Kyle was a special kind of torment. Her phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. You reap what you sow. Sarah. Chloe stared at the text, her blood boiling. I'm not going to engage, she told herself, even as her fingers itched to type out a furious reply. She failed. Leave me alone. You have no business in my marriage. A minute later, the response came. It's not your marriage anymore, sweetie. He deserves better. Chloe hissed in fury, but forced herself to put the phone down. They can have each other, she thought, though the thought brought no peace, only a fresh wave of corrosive regret. I never realized how quickly everything could just crumble. On a bleak, overcast Sunday morning, Chloe decided to return to the house one last time before Mark officially left. She wanted closure. She wanted to beg him, on her knees if necessary, to at least keep the lines of communication open for the sake of the children. A tiny, stubborn flicker of hope still burned within her. The hope that he would see the 30 years of good and deem it stronger than the 30-year-old lies. The driveway was clogged with moving boxes. Mark was there, along with his brother, loading the last of his belongings into a large U-Haul truck. When he spotted her car, his expression hardened into that familiar, impenetrable mask. Why are you here? He said, striding up to her before she had even fully stepped out of the car. We need to talk, alone. He stiffened, then nodded curtly. Inside. They stood in the barren living room. The house was just an empty shell now, the echoes of their life together, silenced. Say what you need to say, he said, his arms crossed. Please, Mark, she began, her voice soft, stripped of its usual armor. I know I messed up. I know I made horrible, stupid choices when I was young. But we've had 30 years, Mark. 30 years of marriage. That has to count for something. I have been faithful to you every single day since we said I do. You know that. He let out a derisive snort. Actually, Chloe, I don't know that. Considering how well you hid this other side of yourself, how can I be sure of anything? She took a step closer, ignoring the chill her words sent through her. Look, let's be honest. Hannah might not be your biological child, but you're the only father she's ever known. She loves you. And so do I. That has to be worth something. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Well, you should have thought about that before lying to me for 30 years. Her voice hitched. It was a mistake. I'm not the same person I was back then. Don't throw away everything we built because of who I was before we even started building it. Mark stared at her for a long, painful moment, then shook his head slowly. You know, a few months ago, I would have listened to that. I would have believed it. But after reading those diaries, they're not just words on a page. They're a window into your character. The character you had when you married me. They're old, she interjected, tears finally spilling over. It doesn't matter if it was 30 years or 30 seconds, he raised his voice, the calm shattering. You let me believe I was marrying someone pure, someone loyal, someone honest. All that time you had this horde of skeletons in your closet. Kyle, Greg, Eddie, Matt, and God knows who else. And that photo. I can't unsee that, Chloe. I close my eyes and it's there. Her face twisted in shame, but she quickly hardened again. You're unbelievable. I can't change the past. Exactly, he replied, his voice dropping to a near whisper. And I can't change how I feel. Chloe's bravado finally cracked, and the raw despair poured out. So that's it. You're just leaving? Giving up on us? He nodded, a single definitive motion. We're already divorced in every way that matters. The legal process will just be a formality. I have no reason to stay in this house, this town, this state. I'm done. She clasped her hands together as if in prayer. Please, Mark, let's at least try therapy. Maybe we can— No, he said, the finality in that single word absolute. I won't spend the rest of my life in a therapist's office trying to unbreak something that was broken before it even began. I can't look at you without picturing them. I can't touch you without wondering if you're thinking of one of them. Her shoulders slumped in utter defeat. So, you're just running off to Arizona? Maybe start something with Sarah? Mark raised an eyebrow. What I do or who I see is none of your business. But for the record, at least Sarah isn't hiding any diaries-filled secrets. But that's irrelevant. We're finished, Chloe. She felt the last desperate flash of rage. You're a hypocrite. If you're hooking up with her, you're no better than me. He cut her off with a bitter, weary laugh. Oh my God, you still don't get it. This isn't about me hooking up with anyone. It's about your fundamental betrayal, your arrogance, the lies that form the very foundation of our entire marriage. If you can't see the difference, then there truly, truly is nothing left to say. They stood in silence, the chasm between them wider than the Grand Canyon he was headed toward. Mark's brother poked his head in the door. Hey, Mark, truck's all loaded. We should hit the road if we want to make good time. Mark nodded. Right. He looked at Chloe one last time, his eyes sweeping over the wreckage of the woman he once loved. Then he turned, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of the house, out of his life, without a backward glance. Life, in its cruel, relentless way, went on. Mark settled in Sedona, Arizona. He sent a postcard to Hannah, a picture of the Red Rocks with a short, loving note. He did not send one to Chloe. Hannah, after a period of intense therapy, moved to Phoenix to be closer to the only father she had ever known, though their relationship was now fraught with a new, complicated grief. Ben graduated college and took a job in Seattle, putting as much physical distance between himself and the family scandal as he could. Chloe stayed in Brookhaven, a ghost in her own life. She found a part-time job at a local antique store, a fitting purgatory amidst other people's discarded memories. She lived with Melissa, a permanent guest in a home that was not her own. Some nights, she lay awake in the single bed replaying every moment. The group photo, the diary entries, the day she saw the positive pregnancy test and felt terror instead of joy. It had all been so easy to dismiss back then, to label it the past and lock it away. But now she understood. The past isn't a foreign country. It's the foundation, and if that foundation is rotten, the whole structure will eventually collapse, no matter how beautiful it looks from the outside. She heard through a mutual friend that Mark was happy. that he had taken up hiking, that the desert air agreed with him, that he and Sarah were just friends. The news brought no solace, only a profound, aching loneliness. One afternoon, while organizing a box of vintage postcards at the antique store, she found one that made her breath catch. It was a cheap, faded card from the 1990s depicting a generic beach scene. Scrawled on the back was a message, "Having the best time. Wish you were here." It was meaningless, anonymous, but for Chloe it was a key that unlocked the vault of her regret. She thought of the postcard Mark had sent Hannah. She thought of the diary. She thought of all the words that she had written that had ultimately destroyed her world. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over Hannah's name. She typed out a message, deleted it, then typed another. "I know I can never undo the hurt I caused. I live with that regret every single day. I just wanted you to know that I love you. I always have. I'm so proud of the woman you are. Mom." She hit send before she could lose her nerve, then did the same for Ben. There was no immediate response. There might never be. But for the first time since Mark's voice had bellowed from the basement, Chloe Mitchell stopped making excuses. She sat in the quiet of the antique store, surrounded by the silent witnesses of other people's lives,
And finally, truly, began to grieve for the life she had single-handedly demolished. The revenge was complete, but it wasn't Mark's. It was the cold, unforgiving revenge of the truth, and it was a sentence she would serve for the rest of her days.